From first hunts to lifelong traditions, we're here to honor the heritage, hear the passion, and connect through the stories that make us all hunters. Grab your gear, find your stand, and listen in as we share another journey that shapes a hunter's legacy. This episode is brought to you by Logic Hunt, an app designed for the future of hunting, helping you prepare with purpose and pursue with precision. How's it going, man? Good to see you.
It's going great. Thanks for the opportunity and inviting me on the show. I think you got a great thing going here. I love the concept, and I really think there's going to be a lot of value added in this. Before I even listened to your first podcast, you said it in the first one. It was the same guys in the industry telling the same stories. Not that those stories aren't great or anything. New content and ideas to come out there. And sometimes is as if folks are trying too hard. And I see it from maybe we go back to kind of like the baseline, right? Like we all started somewhere and you could jump 10 million directions from that. But I think you definitely have hit a niche that is not an industry. And I look forward to seeing where this goes. I really think you got it, man. This is a good one. So I'm excited to be here and talk hunting. I love talking hunting. It's all I do.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. Well, the first 4 episodes, they're running, what do we got here? Episode downloads. The first one was 21, then 24, then 18, then 18, and the one that dropped Monday just hit 116.
There you go. Exponential growth.
We'll know if we're onto something if a lot of those people stick around. If it goes back down to 20, then we might have to reconsider things. But yeah, great to have you on, man. I know we've been talking for a couple weeks trying to find some time to get on a podcast. Before we start, I usually like to ask a guest a little bit about who they are, not necessarily revolving around hunting, just so people can relate to the different environments people grow up. Not everybody has the same amount of time to hunt. So fill us in, dude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to share my background, how I got into hunting, because it's a little different than most. My mother is a Colombian immigrant. She married my father in Panama, who's from Texas, and my grandfather was in the Army, so he was stationed in Panama, and that's kind of how that all came about. I was born in Texas, but at the age of 6, my parents divorced, and I moved to Tampa, Florida, with my mother. My mother doesn't speak English, not much to this day. I did a little bit of fishing with my father growing up, and when I was in high school, I did a little bit of fishing with friends. But my mother was, basically an immigrant into this country, so I didn't have male father figure. I didn't know anything about really anything. When I got to college, I actually got an Army ROTC scholarship. I went to Texas A&M, and I just left the Army August of 2023 after 10 years of service. But when I was at Texas A&M, hunting, it was always in me. Talking to my grandfather, who I'm very close with, he did his fair share of hunting growing up. It was always something like biting at me on the inside. I didn't understand. I didn't know what it was. And the earliest thing I can remember is I had just commissioned into the Army. This was 2013. I was at my, we call it BOLIC, my initial officer training school. Got selected as an ordnance officer, ammunition maintenance area. And I remember getting an email from Fort Lee at the time that something about an archery season for deer. I said, well, that's very interesting. I'd never watched a hunting show or really didn't know anyone who did any of that. And fast forward about a year and a half later, I'd actually came back from my first deployment in Afghanistan. And I was at a lake. I had a little golden retriever, and I was just hanging out, and he took off running to go play with another dog. My owner is Todd, who's now one of my best friends down in Texas. Well, we got to talking, and Todd was a big bow hunter. And your podcast, in your first episode, you talk about bow hunters. It always started somewhere, right? So that's where it started for me, archery. And I was stationed at Fort Hood in Texas at the time. He helped me find my first bow, a used Bowtech Destroyer 350. And he met me at an archery shop. He took care of me and made sure I got all set up. I was actually pretty good at it and really enjoyed it. I like to shoot. So to me, it was no different than fundamentals of shooting. And within a year, I found myself harvesting my first deer. As soon as I posted the photos, the first comment I got was, "Oh, did you shoot the spots off of it?" Which I really didn't care. I had just taken my first animal and with a bow. So that's how I kind of started my hunting career, thanks to Todd and archery. We grew closer, and he ended up taking me on my first duck hunt down in Texas. So that's kind of the other pillar of me, like archery and waterfowl hunting are my things. In the Army, fortunately got to move away. So 2017, I ended up moving away. Then I spent a few years up in Alaska, which was a dream come true. And I got to meet some incredible folks, but didn't get to do the amount of hunting that I would have liked to for very many different reasons. One of them being having to go to Iraq. This was around COVID. So that was a very fun time. Up until this point, I was a very casual, like, hey, do you hunt? Yeah, I hunt. But like that's about it. So we then moved to Virginia in 2020, about the fall. I said, okay, I want to get back into hunting. We were living in Charlottesville, Virginia. My wife was attending UVA. She's an Army nurse. So it was a pretty sweet gig. They sent her back to school. And I had my last job in the Army down there. So I got to do a lot more hunting, not really like archery. I was just kind of tearing myself up. Texas is a bait state, nothing against bait states. I killed my first deer with a bow. Virginia was very challenging for me because all I knew about deer hunting was sit in a blind and wait for them to go into the feeder. I spent a lot of time in the woods, and I did have a lot of success in my first 2 seasons. But here is how big of a rookie I was. My 3rd season, I changed. Everything changed. My first 2 seasons, basically, this farm I was on had a couple blinds, box blinds on the edge of fields. I never once looked at a wind chart. Hunting 101. And I can't tell you how many dozens of hours I probably wasted sitting in a box blind because the wind was awful. It wasn't even right. So my 3rd year there, I knew we were going to be moving soon. I knew we were moving to Kentucky. And I was like, well, I either have to go to public land or shell out a lot of money for a lease. So I challenged myself to become a better deer hunter. And my 3rd season in Virginia, that's when I actually started paying attention. And then I moved to Kentucky 2 years ago. And since then, I've just been on kind of my own personal path to become a better hunter and really understand hunting and just picking up any weapon, any season, hunting any animal. But I also really like to cook, and I like tasty animals. Everything I harvest, we utilize basically everything. I'll harvest everything. And I make some pretty awesome recipes with it. So that's the connection that ended up coming back and why it's now really a lifestyle. I want to fill that freezer for my family. And every day I get out there, it's not just about the kill. It's everything else that comes with it. I can't have a bad day in the woods. And I always try to get better and learn more. So that's more or less how I got my start. And now I'm up to a couple crazy things that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, dude, that's incredible. First off, thanks for your service. I know it takes some big kahunas to do what you did, so really appreciate that. I don't know if you get enough appreciation from everybody. Could you talk a little bit about your time with the military? You mentioned you lived in a couple of states.
Sure.
So kind of expand on what you were doing in those different states and what your favorite place was to spend some time.
So I started the story. I moved out of Texas. I ended up graduating high school in Florida, and then I went to Texas A&M, and then I commissioned in 2013 as that ordnance officer. So I left Texas for like 6 months for schooling, came back, and my first job was a platoon leader of a maintenance company, maintenance support. And we had guys that worked on radios, night vision, thermals, weapon systems, anything from a pistol up to big artillery, M777 howitzers, stuff like that. Maintenance support, did a lot of services. I then moved up from there into a maintenance control officer, where I was kind of in charge of what we call a motor pool, where all your equipment, your wheeled equipment and everything goes. Had essentially an entire battalion's worth of equipment. A battalion probably consists of about 500, 600 soldiers. And I can't begin to tell you how much equipment is there, but there are different types of units. So there's light units, like your infantry, like 82nd Airborne, and then heavy tanks. And then the in-between is it's kind of a hybrid, and there's a striker. If you're familiar with the striker, it's got like 8 wheels on it. It looks like it could float on water, but it can't. The Marines have a version that does. So after 4 years in Texas doing that, we have to go to what's called a captain's career course. Is the next step in our career advancement, you're eventually going to take command. So I got up to Alaska in 2017, and in 2018, I took command of a maintenance company. 115 soldiers under my command. I did all the maintenance for an entire brigade, 4,500 personnel, 7 battalions, field artillery, engineer equipment, you name it, we did it. During that, the end of my command, our unit up there actually got picked up to head to Iraq. And initially, I did not head out on that deployment. I ended up going a little later. And this actually ended up being my favorite time and my favorite job. It was a little hectic at the time, but I got to run like real life logistics that mattered. in a war zone. Just some of the things I can't tell you, but it was very unique, and really being on, just seeing kind of how the geopolitical relations work. It's not just like a war like you would think. It's kind of odd sometimes, it's almost like it's a big game. Like, we can do this, but we can't do that. But what I really enjoyed about that is, like, I really like understood everything we were doing and was making a meaningful impact. When I returned from that deployment and I left Alaska, my last 3 years, I actually had a pretty easygoing job. I basically ran all the logistics and the supply at the U.S. Army JAG school in Charlottesville. And those are the Army lawyers that they train. So I got out of 10 years. I had been picked up to get promoted to major, but I had enough. So logistics is my background, what I'm good at. I decided to go in a totally different direction post-Army, and I'm almost done with an MBA and pursuing a few business opportunities.
Dude, that's awesome. How long were you in Alaska?
We were there for 3 years. I actually met my wife there. So I was originally from Texas, and she's from Maine. It was a pretty good spot to meet, and we really enjoyed the outdoors before I was even really big in the hunting.
How'd you meet her in Alaska?
She's also in the Army. She's active duty. She's an Army nurse. So I married up. She's awesome.
So she could whoop up on you?
Yeah, she's tiny, but mighty. Her and I were actually in Iraq together in 2020. I've got a pretty awesome photo of us that, we'll frame and show the kids and grandkids one day to show how the parents or grandparents were. It's just a really cool, it's one of those photos that it really is going to like last a generation and transcend generation.
So I'm assuming the photo is you getting a paper cut and she putting a Barney Band-Aid on it since she was your nurse?
That would be perfect. Now we're actually in our full kit, so what we call full battle rattle, helmet, IOTV, M4 slung over in front of we were in Camp Taji, Iraq. So there's a big old sign, and we're just in front of it. So it's just, pretty cool.
The nurses carry the guns too?
It's a requirement to qualify on your rifle. Whether you're in a combat arms job or not, you have to qualify on a rifle annually, especially if you're getting deployed. So yeah, everyone carries. Yeah, it's one of the annoying things, honestly, because like sometimes you're in a deployed environment where it's like the risk is very low, but you always have to carry a weapon. So like for 9 months, you're carrying an M4. Maybe in hindsight, now that I think about it, maybe a lot of that muscle memory is I've retained, and that's probably why I don't mind walking around 10 miles on public land trying to find a gobble where most people would quit.
Man, if I was deployed, it'd all be a high stress situation. I suppose if you're not familiar with it, when I visualize it, I don't see any safe areas overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan.
It's a lot different than a lot of people think. It just depends on kind of where you're at. Iraq is more civilized than like Afghanistan. Afghanistan is like there's not a whole lot around there. In Iraq, they've got a city, Erbil, that at night looks like Vegas lit up. I never made it up to that base, but it's one of the bigger bases. And I see the photos, and like if you're there, it's like.
Would you ever go back?
Absolutely not. We had a couple close calls, honestly, back in 2020, both my wife and I, and we wanted to start a family. And I wasn't really happy with the direction my career was going. She was really good at her job. I was okay, stepping down, and that's kind of also how I got to where I'm at now, being a quote unquote stay-at-home dad / entrepreneur. But really, the main goal is to be able to be here for the family. I mean, I've done a lot in 10 years. I've lived a lot of life. I'm capable of managing a lot. And to me, this is probably one of the easiest things I've ever done and the most rewarding and most fulfilling. I'm not really making any money, but that doesn't matter to me right now. It'll come one day.
We don't have to go into this if you don't want, but headspace after going through some of that stuff, you said you had some close calls. Is that stuff kind of affect you mentally?
No, this is great, because this could be a little medium to bounce something off. It affects everyone differently. And what I tell people is that fight, flight, or freeze reflex is very real. And you have no idea which type of person you're going to be until you're in a situation where that happens. And, the biggest, tallest, strongest could be the one that locks up and freezes. So you can't really, it's hard to say how you're going to react or how you think others are going to react until it happens. Now, the reverse is also true. It affects everyone different on the back end. So, and I'm going to give you a perfect example for me, because I never really had issues other than the loud noises when I came back from Afghanistan. But I was always kind of on guard anyways, just keeping my head on swivels. It didn't really affect me as much. But almost a year ago, we got clipped by a tornado, and that was the first time I've ever dealt with that. We had just had I had a newborn that was 5 days old, and my other daughter was not even two. We had just came back from the hospital, and my mother-in-law, who was very slow, was here. We had a very small closet, and I had to get everyone in, and felt, the vacuum. If you've ever been in a tornado, and hope it never happens again, but like we got very lucky. I felt the pressure and everything, and it was probably the scariest moment of my life. And it was because at that moment, I couldn't do anything, which was exactly how it is for me when I was deployed. But in this moment, having my little girls with them in that closet, that was very different. After that incident, I actually started having some issues. I started with sleep. But anyways, yeah, it's thank you for asking that question. I think the mental health needs to get talked about, and I'm fine, but it's good to check on people and ask those questions.
No, I was talking about I'm sure it's a hard discussion. And part of that, you talked about the tornado, is probably just that paternal instinct trying to protect your family. I'm sure that had part of it.
That was part of it, and the other was it was unexpected. And that's kind of how it happens a lot of the time. Like, yeah, you're kind of expecting something to happen, but the siren I heard, because I didn't even know there was a siren, like a big siren tower near us, and it was basically the same siren that you hear when you have incoming fire. So that, of course, probably triggered some stuff. But the main thing was feeling kind of helpless with my family, and my wife, felt the same way. We talked about it, we talked through it, but yeah, it was. I don't like tornadoes. The only thing I don't like about Kentucky.
Before we get more into hunting, you talked about stay-at-home dad, entrepreneur. Why don't you expand a little bit on what you're trying to do?
Logistics was my background. I wasn't really happy in it. Just good at it, but not passionate. So I kind of flipped the script and decided to go pursue an MBA with my GI Bill. So I'm currently at the University of Florida doing an online MBA. I'm graduating this December, and it has actually been quite the journey. Real good move for me. I didn't know I had any business acumen, but I had an RV that I started renting out in Virginia, and it did pretty well. So I was like, okay, well, maybe if I buy another RV and just do this a little bit, it'll just fund my hunting obsession at the end of the day. And the other half of it was, well, I don't know anything about business. So if I run a small business while learning the big side stuff, after 2 years, I should maybe know or figure out what I want to do. So that's how it started, and it's been going quite well. I started Labrador Outfitters LLC. We'll talk probably a little bit about how I got into bird dog training. So there's a whole story behind that. I rent RVs. We are about to open a guide and outfitting services down in Texas. I just moved my boat down there 2 weeks ago, part of the travels that I was doing while we were chatting. And the other company is called Frizzy's LLC, and it is actually right there. It's freeze-dried fruits. Some candies, a lot of people know about the Skittles from TikTok, but we're kind of healthier. Not like health nuts, but I'm not trying to give sugar to the kids.
You don't have Skittles, man?
I do. I have a few, but my real goal of this is an alternative healthy snack for kids. If you haven't had freeze-dried fruits, because there are not many people who are making them, it's not really on the market yet, and it's not the same as dehydrated fruit. That a lot of people think that. It's quite the treat. It's very light, and it started with my daughter. She was 6 months old. I bought a freeze dryer for a backcountry hunt that we'll get into, and take my own meals. And back to the squeezing money from an asset, I was like, well, what else can I do? So for a year, I didn't realize, but I was testing a product. My daughter Isabel, we call her Izzy, so Izzy's Frizzies. It's kind of her our brand. We're kind of building it together. It's kind of fun. Still don't really know what I'm doing, but take photos. She helps me do stuff, and it's been very well received. Just small level right now. I'm juggling a lot, but I've got the plan to expand and penetrate the market within 12 months, hopefully. So got a few things to go through. But my ultimate goal, which was a pipe dream at the time, was my own freeze-dried meal line. And that's becoming a reality with Backcountry Bistro. I had about 20 beta testers this fall, all across the country, guys I've never met. And every single one of them, they responded very positively. And it was one of those things that I kind of joked about, didn't really intend to do that, but this is the direction it's going in. And all these businesses that kind of align together in the outdoor industry. Now I'm living my dream. I'm getting to work from home, be with my girls, share something, with them. I feel like I figured out a cheat code in a way, and I'm just getting started. So I'm pretty excited for the future and what's to come. Hopefully Backcountry Bistro and Frizzies will be on store shelves soon.
I thought getting my app to the store was going to be the hardest part, and it would just snowball. That was the easiest part. Customer awareness.
Yes.
I'm guessing your companies, maybe outside the RV, are a lot lower investment than mine. Maybe not, but
I've self-funded everything too, which kind of gives me the opportunity to kind of do with it what I want and try to shape it before getting, here soon I'm going to start looking for equity, angel investors, etc. But yeah, it's been it's been 14 months now, less than 14 months since I started those two LLCs. It's come a long way, but man, I still feel like there's so much, there's so much to do.
from all the research I've done, I'm about a year and a half in. I think year 3, 4 is where stuff really takes off. I'm currently looking for angel investors right now. Are you going to be getting to that point sometime?
Very soon, some discussions are starting with some folks, but I'm trying to keep this as close as possible because I feel like I really have something here. I don't want to lose control of it, and I should have a good enough network of hopefully a couple buddies from the Army and other connections to get me started on equity. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to take out a business loan. So really, it'll be how much can I muster for the down payment. But when you look at it, I mean, taking out $1 million loan for a business is like not a lot. And if you need 20% down, I don't know many people walking around at $200,000. So, those angel investors and stuff, that's the MBA side of this journey is starting to teach me all that. And of course, networking with folks. It's been fun, but yeah, there's a lot of folks swimming in the water. It seems like it. And
I would start looking for angel investors. So when I started, I was the same way as you. I don't want to ask people what they think about this because I'm afraid somebody's going to steal my idea. And as you learn, it's never the idea, it's the execution. Anybody can have a great idea. And when you talk about angel investors, sure, you're going to have to give up equity, but there's a couple ways of looking at it. Would you rather have, let's say, 5% of McDonald's, all locations, or 100% of a local restaurant? That plus angel investors, if you find the right ones, they're going to help you
not
plan.
just financially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it never hurts to start looking for investors. You don't have to say yes to them or whatnot. But I've done a lot of research on. I have a really good business plan and pitch deck. If you like reading, somebody pointed me in the direction. It's called the Mom Test. So it's basically how you do customer discovery without asking your mom. Your mom's always going to say, "Oh yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Yeah, do this, that." It's about how to ask questions. So not necessarily asking them about questions in the future like, "Hey, would you like eating these freeze-dried Skittles on the road?" It's how do you prepare for your hunts and what are some things that are missing? But I highly recommend that book.
Okay. Cool. Well, I appreciate the recommendation. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I've been approached just like I said, I'm juggling a lot, and I'm kind of like having to contain it at this point. School's just been a lot, and my youngest daughter turns 1 on Monday, and the other one turns 3 at the end of July. Things should everything I've been setting up is for graduation, and immediately penetrate the market. So I think I may be a little bit ahead of where I thought I would be at this point, which isn't a bad thing. But yeah, trying to juggle and balance, like, okay, keep it close enough, but like keep moving forward. Because the thing is, like, I could easily, sell out of everything. It's going to take me 2 months to get everything back in stock. So I've been doing it strategically with my marketing and research, and it's been very fun. And I think I'm pretty much on to what I need very soon.
I'm no business expert. This is my first go around.
It's same here, man.
I understand you're busy. I don't have the kids. I can't speak for that, but I work full time, 40 hours a week. It started Logic on this side. I still do both of them. Plus, I'm starting this podcast and doing.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm working 14, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. But from what you told me, what I would do, don't worry about your secret getting out. Don't worry.
No, I ain't worried about that.
But
I actually tell people, hey, this isn't proprietary. Anyone can do it, but they're not going to do it as good as me, and they're not going to have a story better than mine.
But if you got your stuff into a couple stores, don't worry about selling out. Use that to get people talking about it. Then do the whole, what do they call it? It's
like a Kickstarter, or
No, it's where they drop inventory at a certain time. So you sell out, people start talking about it. You're like, we're going to have a big order ready January 1, get your orders in and just build that suspense. Like, we're going to sell out, get your orders in. That's how I would do
Yeah.
your business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I was also recommended that by a professor more so because the freeze dried meals, a lot of the folks I've been marketing to, like, I've absolutely won them as customers, but this is only going to be like in the fall, right? So I got to figure out the other 3/4 of the business. And that's the fun, but the challenging part of it.
Well,
But,
you got campers and hikers and
yeah, and I'm renting the RV, so like a lot of it, I'm even just giving stuff out, and I think the great thing about it is you can kind of build it the way you want it, and there's no like right or wrong way, and every day is a series of decisions.
but if you
So
get your stuff out there and even if you sell out and you start preparing for your next drop order, that's just going to help you figure out, you might have 30 different products, maybe 5 of them don't sell. How do you focus on your top sellers?
absolutely, yep, yeah. I've got a Shopify store, so, it's been fun. I'm really not like the best at IT. So those are like, that's where it gets difficult. Like, how's the website look, the SEO campaigns. I'm learning more and more. And I've got someone helping me now, but I'll be honest, like twice I've kind of given it off to someone and just not really gotten the results I wanted. So finally one night I sat down with a drink on Chat GPT and I did more in 4 hours for my website than in 9 months of waiting for folks. So
Did you go through WordPress?
no. So Shopify, you can kind of build it out yourself. So I had ChatGPT walk me through it and then build me the HTML codes. And, my website's still in process, but Shopify, the platform itself, very straightforward. So it just builds the store for you. You just have to decorate it. And the decoration is really what I'm referring to. And there's a few other things like I'd like certain services. I'd like them to be booked, through an invoicing system that's automatic. My Shopify store is like you buy a product, right? I'm not selling you a 3-day RV rental on Shopify, but on my website through Shopify, I could have a tab with basically a contact us.
I let somebody build my website for Logic, and I wish I would have just learned how to do it. So I'm struggling through the process of building a web page for this podcast so people can go watch episodes, do a blog, and once I get 1,000 regular subscribers, I'll do some apparel. I got too much on my plate right now, but
yeah, no, I understand that.
But cool, yeah, we'll have to bounce some ideas off each other.
Absolutely, yeah. Enough about that. We don't want to lose your listeners. Let's get into the juicy stuff.
I'm hoping people will enjoy this because the way I see it, everybody has a different angle on how they hunt, how much time they have to hunt, what their priorities are. Maybe they don't have too much going on where they can't hunt enough. I like bringing all this stuff together, but I'm surprised that you killed your first deer so fast.
Yeah.
With the bow. I'm surprised you killed your first deer so fast. I've talked to 4 or 5 people, and I don't know if anybody's killed one with a bow faster than 4 or 5 years.
Really? Well, but that's probably in Iowa. You hunt Iowa, like mainly for whitetail. I'm sure you're talking to folks all over the place, but you're probably talking to a lot of Midwesterners, which I haven't hunted whitetail in Midwest. I know there's a heavy archery.
Somebody from Missouri, me, Kentucky, Alabama, they've all said the same thing. So you're obviously a much better hunter than us.
Yeah, no, man. It's a luck a lot of the time. But yeah, so that first year, I actually took that young doe on Fort Hood. Here's a funny story. I had the bow. I had my hunting permit for Fort Hood, but I didn't know what the hell to do after that. And I Facebook post said, "Hey, does anyone want to go scout this weekend?" It was opening weekend for archery. You can imagine how badly I got drug. Because I didn't really understand this, but basically everyone's like, "Why are you going to go scouting on opening?" Well, one guy actually messaged me and said, "Hey, I got a stand down in this area. You can get a doe there. Like, it's nothing crazy." He was another soldier, and he took me out and he showed it to me, and I was like, "Awesome." So when I got that first deer, no amount of like videos or reading could prepare me to do it on my own, right? So a lot of folks get into hunting, like someone will be there like throughout the whole process in the beginning. I was watching videos while on staff duty at 3 a.m. on how to gut a deer. And when it came to gut my first deer, I was looking at it and I didn't know what to do. So I called the guy and he actually came out and no big deal. He showed me kind of more or less started it for me, the cuts, and I pulled the guts out. He helped me drag it. And then I threw it in the back of my '07 Honda Civic, which was pretty funny. and I drove it to a processor. So that's how I started off. And I ended up killing my first buck that year as well with a bow, a little basket 8. Well, it took me 10 years to kill another buck with a bow, and that actually happened at the end of November here in Kentucky on public land.
Now we're talking. That's a little more normalized than killing on your first year.
Yeah, and I killed a few with a rifle and one with a muzzleloader in Virginia. Okay bucks, nothing crazy. I'm just trying to learn how to hunt. But now, when I moved to Kentucky, things changed, and I was like, I want to go do it as hard as possible, because being in the military every 2 or 3 years moving, I guess I just got tired of waiting around until someone said, "Hey, why don't you come hunt with me?" or asking for permission. Like, it got to a point where I need to figure this out on my own. And my motivation, like I said earlier, was to put meat in the freezer for my family. And I can't tell you how much time I spent. Public land, Kentucky, everyone said, don't waste your time. And it's crowded and this, that, and the other. I did not run into a single hunter back where I hunt my first year hunting. I had 2 or 3 guys on a camera, but the thing is, in Kentucky, most folks, they hunt the farms, and out-of-staters generally are kind of coming to public land. And the public lands around here are no bait and archery only, unless some have quotas. Most have quotas. So 15,000 acres, that was 97% hardwoods, 45 minutes from my house to go play with a bow and not bait. That's how I wanted to hunt them, because I was forced to learn how to do that in Virginia. So that first season, I probably put about 500 miles, hunted 45 days, and I was seeing deer. This was the tough part. I was seeing deer almost every single time, but 5 yards too far or thicket in the way. I was getting close to them, very close, and I started to get some really, really nice bucks on camera. That's what drove me to do this. I'd drive 45 minutes, I'd hike 2 miles in, and there were some days where I'd do that. I'd come back home for lunch, drive back out, and do it again. It was ridiculous how much time I spent. But I look back now, and I'm such a better hunter because of it. And this season, everything changed. I couldn't figure out last year why I wasn't seeing these big bucks. I was seeing bucks. I was seeing younger bucks. I was seeing doe almost every time. But there was a few big ones in there that I really wanted to get an eye on. Thermals is oh man, I still don't even fully understand them, but I've been trying to learn how thermals work since hunting in Virginia. And I finally figured out, after some of my military expertise came in handy here, because I had to kind of ditch the Onyx overlays and really just truly look at terrain on a map. And I realized that.
What the hell, man? You can't say that word on this podcast.
What's that?
Onyx.
Yeah. Okay. Delete that. Be honest, man. I mainly use Google Earth, because that's a trick I've learned. All right. Here's a tip I'll give out that I've learned. If you're going deep onto public land, you really don't know where to start, put a terrain feature on first. Try to find whatever the low line bonds and the draws. And then if you find those areas where you think would be good pinch points or good funnels, edges, corridors, switch it to satellite imagery only. And it'd be very difficult, but if you get good at it, you can start to distinguish between different shades of green, which obviously means different growth, and sometimes is historical clear cut. This place I'm hunting, for example, it's been 17 years since they've clear cut it. So it's all thick, it's all ground up, and you look, it's all green. You look closely, you'll see areas, and a lot of times they correlate with the terrain features. And that's kind of how I started scouting new areas after putting a lot of boot leather on the ground and seeing kind of all right, I know they're here. I know they're moving around here, but now I got to figure out how to get in here undetected. And last year, basically, the wind was right. There was one area that I was crossing that my thermals were just sitting about 30, 45 minutes where this buck was coming through, and everything else was perfect. And it was kind of annoying to learn that. But this year I came in and I approached it differently. And actually on election day, this is why I remember it, I missed a shot on a 145. So my first public land Kentucky buck would have been a Pope and Young. I've got it on video, and I'm not really upset that I missed, because immediately after, and it was barely over the top. I kind of chuckled afterwards, because my first thought was, I just had the opportunity to sling an arrow at a deer of that magnitude on public land. I've made it. In my opinion, I've made it. What the goal that I strove to be. It's still tough, and I still want to get out there. But that's what I've been up to in Kentucky the last 2 years. But this buck I killed, it wasn't that one, obviously. 3 weeks later, I go to a brand new area, and I do what I just told you, looking at terrain, looking at overlays. So I pick a spot I'm going to walk into, and I'm going to scout my way in. As I get close to where I'm intending to set up, start seeing very, very fresh sign. I was like, all right, I like this. There's an edge there, grapes here, tree rubs. Oh, there's some fresh scat. All right, there's a good tree coming off a draw, but there was also a little tiny drainage, like a little ditch kind of coming across. And I looked at it, and now I knew thermals, and I said, all right, this will buy me at least 30 minutes. Thermals will pull right here. I don't even have to get that high in a tree. I also started saddle hunting this year, which was another big reason for my continued success. A lot of these areas are so thick that you either got to sit on the ground with a crossbow or spot and stock, or if you can get a saddle, that'll open up a lot more. So I did this, and it was about 3:00 in the afternoon, and I texted my wife. Everything was perfect. When it's perfect, late November. It's just the temp, the wind, everything was perfect. And I was like, oh man, I could, whenever the breeze would pick up, I'd smell a redded buck. I knew they were going to come off this ridge, and I texted her and I said, I got a really good feeling that I'll see some action. We'll see what happens. 30 minutes later, I had a buck, probably 15, 20 yards. And he wasn't huge, like 3.5. And I was enjoying just like recording him. And I was like, man, it's like 3:15 and he's already out. I got 2.5 hours left. I was like, there's got to be a bigger one.
That's how I think of it too.
Well, I kept watching him and I couldn't figure out what was going on his right side. And the more I looked, then I was like, well, is he a spike on the left and like have like a nub on the right? So I actually like took my phone out and like zoomed in and took a couple photos and videos. I started looking, and I'll be damned. The first thought that comes to mind is moose. He had palmated antlers.
Really?
So what I had seen was the 3 tines here, but it was palmated all the way up here, and it was kind of like coming in, almost like those little massagers that have like the little nubs on them.
Mm-hmm.
And this side, same palmated, but it was out, so it looked more like a spike. And as soon as I saw that, reminded me of Alaska. All right, I'm taking you down, and it was funny. I was watching it for maybe 20 minutes. So when I go to knock my arrow, I'm in my saddle. I have to slightly move my body to the left, and one of my rope just across the carabiner, the quietest sound ever, and that buck jumped like 10 feet and ran about 10 yards and was like, "What the hell?" And I was like, are you serious? Like, sometimes you're surprised, So then he starts walking away up the ridge. And at this point, he's 30 yards, but dead even with me. I'm about 15, 18 feet up in my saddle, and I'm looking at him, and he's quartering away. He's getting away, but he stopped and he started feeding. And I look, and I have an opening, a perfect opening, but like it wasn't that big. And I've been practicing a lot, and I sent the arrow. I see the light of knock disappear. He takes off running. He turns around, takes off running. I don't see blood. I don't see my knock anymore. And his tail is up in the air. And he just starts running off like nothing. And everything felt so right. I couldn't believe it. And he ran off the ridge, and there was a creek below me. And I'm just listening, and I swear I hear shh, shh, shh. And I was like, is he down? Did I take him down? I also could have sworn that when my arrow hit, I saw what looked like a red can of spray paint going off. Of course, you know how it is. Adrenaline's rushing, I was like, yeah, I didn't see that. Well, it's like 3:30, so there's still 2 hours of hunt. So I immediately get out, and I run over to where I shot I'd be like, there's got to be blood, arrow, something. I don't see anything. And I quickly run back, and I'm like, man, I was like, oh, well. So I get back in, I get ready to hunt. But the whole time I'm thinking about it, I was like, hey, it just doesn't seem right. Where the hell did my arrow go? And it sounded like he crashed. Well, I kind of waited it out till the evening. Then I realized I walked to the wrong damn tree, not the one he was at when I shot him. So I got out right before it got too dark, and I go to the right tree, and within 5 yards of it, there's blood sprayed up about 4 feet. So I 100% saw what I saw. What happened, man, it was very like hard quartering away. It came in, hit the back shoulder, straight through the heart, 30 yards, literally threaded the needle, and he turned around and ran, ended up breaking my arrow. But he had like a broken tail or weird kink in his tail. So, usually a deer runs off with the tail up, not a good sign. His tail was just like that. So I go, and the blood trail it was probably one of the best blood trails I ever had. And by the time I got down to that creek, it was already dark. Like the blood stops, and I'm like looking around, do this. I look to the left, and he's laying 5 yards to my left. And everything about him was much nicer and much better than I thought initially. I think I'd just been looking at so many trail cam photos of some big bucks that I was like, and he was a 9-pointer, all made in antlers. He weighed about 200 pounds.
Really?
Oh, he was big. So I thought that's why I thought his antlers were probably smaller than they were, because he was big bodied. He still had cedar tree shavings at the base of his antlers, and it took me 7 hours to get him out because this was an area that got hit. I screwed up. Normally I'd pack him out, but I was like, I'm only 700 yards from the truck.
Only 700 yards.
But I was up a ridge, and it was an area that got hit by a tornado, so there's a lot of blowdown trees. And because his antlers are palmated, I would drag it. It was like a bulldozer. I'd have to stop every 15 yards and like go and clear all the dead leaves. But it made for a very memorable hunt. And it was kind of that journey that started, when I took my first deer in Fort Hood, Texas, after I got back from Afghanistan and really started getting into this, to all the hard work that I put into just making that hunt happen. So yeah, I was really proud of myself. I could have easily gone to some private places. I had opportunities to shoot bigger deer. I have buddies of farms, but I'm a little stubborn. So I'm happy that's how it went down. And the fact that I went to a new spot, relied on everything I had learned and taught myself, and just stuck to my instinct, and it happened the way it happened. It was just a beautiful moment for me as an archer, and as a whitetail hunter.
You didn't have anybody. You must be stubborn if you didn't call anybody to help drag the deer.
I did. My buddy, I told him, and he was like, "You need me to come out?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not that far." Here goes the embarrassing part. I'm probably 100 yards from the truck, and I called him and I said, "I can't do it anymore." And, so I went up, and I was so tired. I got into my truck. The second I closed my eyes, I fell asleep. And I got awoken, which I thought was 10 minutes later, but an hour and a half later, by my buddy. And
What time was
"Where
this?
is it?" Oh man, probably about 10:30 at night at this point. And I was like, man, he's just down there, like 150 yards. So we go down, and I was like, "You're fresh." I was like, "Why don't you go?"
So
And
you fell asleep while you waited for him to get there to help drag it out, or?
well, I just went up to my truck because the temp was falling. That was the other thing. It was actually like really getting really cold, and I got him most of the way. I got him over the creek, but the last bit was uphill, and it was nothing but like blowing over trees. So it was just really difficult, and it was starting to get below freezing. So I just went up in the truck to turn the heater on, wait for him to drive down, and took a little snooze. Probably got back to the house a little after midnight. Photos of him on the tailgate. And here's the other thing. I hadn't even field dressed him because I field dressed him when I got to the truck. It was cold enough. I'm not worried about it. I've done this enough times. But I have done enough times that I know if I field dress him and try to drag him out like that, now it's more of a pain because I do all my own processing and everything. I could have dumped another 40 pounds probably doing that, but
Would have helped.
it would have, yeah. But, the way I look at it, and I was just recently visiting my grandfather in a rehab hospital, and he lived such a life, like he's done things that I still dream I could do. And he's 85 and he can't really move anymore, but he's got his mind. So the way I see it is, I'm already a little broken from my time in the military. Let me have fun with this, and while I can, because one of these days my body will fail me. All of us, ours will.
Speak for yourself.
And I'll have some cool stories. Now, I have a new goal for this year. I actually switched over to traditional archery about 4 months ago. I've got a beautiful longbow made in Texas. Bob Serrell from Serrell's Archery. He's about to retire. And I've been shooting about 4 months, and I really like it. I like it a lot better, honestly. I got picked up as an ambassador for Serious Archery. I've been running their TradStar arrows, and I don't know, everything about it just feels like right and comfortable. So my new goal, which I'm okay foregoing harvesting a buck, is to take a buck on the ground with that bow on public land.
Good luck, man. You can do it.
I know. Yeah. I think I can do it. I think I can. I think I've learned enough. There's definitely some spots, like I said, I could have gone in there with a crossbow. Didn't want to do that. Compound bow is just a little bit too much movement. My problem with compound bow is, and this is just me, I'm left eye dominant and I'm right-handed. And I had eye surgery, corrective eye surgery a decade ago. Low light situations make it extremely difficult for me to start seeing pins. So with the traditional, I've been training myself to shoot with both eyes open, and it's been working out very well. My time to shot is pretty quick. And a lot of the areas I hunt, they're going to be tight shots anyways. I mean, I'm getting in real tight to bedding areas, like some of these spots where I say I'm going to hunt the ground. I'm serious because there's areas where a lot of blown over trees. I had a moment last year where I was on the ground 40 yards away from a cruising buck in the rain. you don't get those experiences if you don't go mess around in public land.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So I look forward. I'm gonna keep grinding out in public land, making it harder for myself, but it makes me better. And one of these days, I'll have my own farm, get to grow all the big bucks I want. I'm still gonna hunt archery, but it's been quite the journey, I'd say, to start with archery and kind of really embrace it now and move
Well,
forward.
you set the bar pretty high.
Yeah. We'll lead into my Alaska caribou hunt story because I kind of made a similar decision. So when I got out of the Army, I wanted to go on my dream hunt was an elk hunt. So I was prepared to, go on an outfitted guide elk hunt out west. I had an Army buddy of mine reach out, and he wanted to go do a DIY caribou hunt up in Alaska. And I was stationed up there, so he was asking me for some advice. So I was helping him go through regs, whatnot. And if you know anything about hunting Alaska, I mean, it's very cumbersome. It's not as difficult as you think. It is expensive, but really it's expensive because of transportation. So for a caribou hunt, there's a few ways to go about it. We did a DIY hunt north of the Brooks Range off the Dalton Highway. So the Dalton Highway runs from Fairbanks, Alaska, all the way up to Prudhoe Bay, about 450 miles or so. Ice Road Truckers, that's the road that's in reference to. Once you get to the Brooks Range, is kind of the top third of Alaska, and you come up and down over the Brooks Range, it just becomes another planet. The tundra, they call it the North Slope. Tundra is pretty awful to walk in. The Alaska pipeline runs across that. Because of that, it's a federally managed area. I mean, Alaska is basically public land everywhere. This area, this caribou zone, you can only bow hunt 5 mile. Like if you're 5 miles off the road on either direction, 10-mile corridor, it's archery only. If you are outside the 5 miles, you can hunt with a rifle. I'm talking 5 miles, and it's like 5,000 miles, or however big it is. So if you really want to have a successful caribou hunt, you're gonna pay for a bush pilot to fly you in. You're going to get on a list 2 to 3 years out. You're going to pay $5,000 to $6,000 just for that bush pilot. And you still got to get up there and everything. The advantage is they can fly you way back in there. You can use your rifle and you can get ahead of the herd. If you want to just go up there for the experience and DIY it, you can, some folks will rent a U-Haul because a lot of rental companies, they won't let you take a car up there. So it's funny seeing like 4 hunters packed in the back of a U-Haul. It doesn't belong, but it's kind of been a workaround. So you go up there and you can take your rifle, but you have to hike outside that 5-mile zone. And it's not 5 miles as a crow flies. And the way I describe walking on tundra to people is, you remember those old ball pits in McDonald's when we were kids? All right, so one of those, but you got basketballs and bowling balls. You got a water bed, and you have 6 inches of shag carpet that's wet. Combine all 3 of those things and walk on it. And that is what walking on the tundra is up there in Alaska. And I'm talking like it'll take an hour to move half a mile.
I know what you mean. You find spots like that, even in Iowa in the swampy areas, maybe where it's dry.
Oh, yeah. With tussocks and stuff. Yeah.
You have like 8-9 inch wide mounds that are probably 10 inches and it's hollow around it. And it's just.
Yeah. It's just nasty stuff.
Roll an ankle.
Exactly. So you can go up there and archery hunt off the road. And that could work out very well. I mean, if the caribou are right there, like they're not the smartest animals, so you can blink them off. But it's still archery and it's very open, so you still have to be a decent hunter and a decent shot. So Tyler, my buddy Tyler, he wanted to do this, and after a few talks with him, I told him, hey, Tyler, I don't think you should go on this hunt by yourself. Because in fact, I wanted to do a big hunt after the Army, and I did want to go back up to Alaska for a caribou hunt. I was like, how about I go with you? And I kind of set this up for us. I was stationed up there. I got connections. I went to Arctic Survival School. I really know the dangers of this environment. And I was like, and in return, we'll do an archery elk hunt under your direction next. Well, we're actually doing that in Idaho in September. Both of us have an archery elk tag. So looking forward to that. Yeah. So, decided to do that. And we were going to take the rifle and the bow. And the week before, I texted Tyler and I said, I'm probably going to regret this, but I'm not bringing my rifle. He goes, are you serious? Because the plan was to hunt the road for the first half. We had 14 days, including travel. We were going to basically hunt off the road, spot and stalk if we see any caribou. And if that wasn't working out, and if it doesn't work out, it's because the herd isn't there yet or they're way beyond the 5 miles. And in some of these areas, you can glass out to 5 miles, but, just because you walk out to the 5 mile mark doesn't mean that the herd's magically there, right? That's the risk that you're taking. So he was taking up a 6.5 Creedmoor. And I was like, if push comes to shove, maybe I can get behind your rifle. I changed my residency to Alaska when I was up there. So I get a couple more tags. And he had the one tag. So I was like, right, hey, if you end up shooting one, I got some tags. I don't, and there's a couple, whatever, I'll take one. So on the third day of the hunt, this is where it actually gets crazy. The herd was not there. They just weren't there yet. And there's flaggers that work the roads in the summer. So if you're nice and you pull over, start a conversation, you may get some intel on like either last year like movement or if they've seen anything. Because the herd moves down through the Brooks Range. They funnel down south of Brooks Range as the winter hits and sets. So there's a few areas that they funnel into, but there's some big rivers. And on the east side of the Dalton Highway, you got the Sag River. Something interesting that I never thought about until I was up there. It makes sense. But the rivers, once you get north of the Brooks Range, they flow north to the Arctic Ocean. So everything south of that, every river I've ever seen has flowed south. But you go over the Brooks Range, the rivers are flowing north. So in the summer, depending on how warm it is in Alaska, if it's warm, there's a lot of glacial melt-off, which then leads to severe, not like, I wouldn't say flooding, but widening of the rivers, which can lock the caribou herds into, basically it can make them almost impossible to get near the road because they end up funneling. There's a few valleys that they'll come into, like in the mountain range. So later in the season, you kind of have a general idea, and you can call Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and they kind of will, more or less give you locations of collared caribou. But I mean, you got to look at the map. Like you're talking about, an area the size of the state of Texas, damn near. So, it's like, okay, maybe we get one off the road. Day 3, we're driving and we see this massive bull about 70 yards off the side of the road, but there's 2 guys hunting it. So we're like, look at that bull. Like we would stop.
Screw them. Shoot, take the shot from the road.
So, well, this one guy, he was really close to it. So I was like, he's going to hit it. Well, he shoots the damn bull, but makes a bad shot. Like shoots it in the leg or the Achilles. I don't remember. I think he got the Achilles because we could see bright red blood coming off hind quarter. Well, these guys, they worked up there. And I don't even know if they had a damn hunting license, to be honest, man. Because as soon as like they made the bad shot and like took off, they're like, we got to go to work, and they hopped in their work truck and left. So Tyler and I are looking at each other and like, are you serious? They just injured that caribou, so we got to try to go kill it. And we were right up against the Sag River. And our original plan was to cross the Sag River and then hike in a little bit. But it was, because of glacial melt-off, it was too dangerous. We had bought a $100 Intex inflatable Walmart raft, 2-person raft in Fairbanks. That was our plan to get across the river if need be. We have eyes on this caribou. So we go to, like, I drop him off and I drive, and we're going to just try to like get in close and finish the kill. We saw that his leg was a little injured. And there was a little island, a little strip of maybe 150 yards and about 70 yards wide in the middle of this river. And straight up, the caribou, like, he swims across and then hits that island, but then he beds down. And his rack was like, Jesus, like 5-6 feet tall. Like, there's no hiding. Like, you lay down, there's no hiding. We can see you, buddy. And the backside of that island was about a 10-12 foot drop off. And we're like, there's no way he's gonna, like, we have him cornered. There's no way that he's leaving that island, because the backside of that was even a wider stretch of the river and more intense. So we devise a plan to go get this Walmart raft, and we're sitting there inflating this damn thing for about 30 minutes. Like, our foot's just like tap, 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 like taking a break. And finally it's like, what in the world is going on? Like, this should be inflated by now. And so we take it down for like a quick test. It had already lost half the air, but we figured out there was a leak in it. And I had super glue and Gorilla Tape and a little bit of it. And I actually like patched up that raft right there. I will never not have that in my pack. In fact, for any of the listeners out there, I'll take like a little like a fire starter, a small like cylindrical one that has the fire starter in it, and the top of it is a flint. And I basically wrapped tape around it, and then I just had a little tube of super glue. Fits in the palm of my hand, easy to just be in the pack. Actually worked. So we repaired it. We're losing daylight. This is August in Alaska, and I say we're losing daylight. It's 11:30 at night, man. Like, it's pretty cool when you're up there in the summer. So we get the raft. We have a plan to get across, but the current, it's very dangerous. So, dudes, we can make it. We're calculating, and it's about 40 yards shot across, but we knew that the current was going to take us immediately. And in the middle, there's kind of a sandbar. And then down on the left edge of that island, it actually was like a little like beach, not like the washout cliff. So we walked up as far as we could. We're basically almost like a Caribou. He was just like, 200 yards that way. We get in the water, immediately start spinning around like this. And I'm like, paddle, 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 dig your paddle and push. And within seconds, we drift 150 miles down, but we beach on the island.
150 miles?
150 yards, not 150 miles. We'd be in the Arctic Ocean at that point. So we beach this island like a couple Navy SEALs. And we're in the prone and forgot the GoPro. I wish we had the GoPros for this. I really do. But we were just trying to go get this kill. So we pull up and we kind of like, look up. Tyler gets down. He goes, I see him. You can't not see him. About 70 yards. The wind was perfect. And he was in the corner. We had him surrounded. I had been practicing at 70. But the wind is a little heavy, and you got to take that into consideration. So we start. I mean, this like shrubs are like maybe this tall, right? So like I have to be all the way down. If I do this, like looking over my laptop, I can kind of see it. So I kind of go this way. Tyler goes around this way, and we're just gonna. Hey, at a certain point, he's probably gonna like see something and get up. At that point, like one of us, might have an opportunity, but he like we got him surrounded. He ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, right.
I'm at 70 yards, 65 yards, and I'm doing little hand signals to Tyler. Basically, I was like, I want 10 more yards, then I'll feel very comfortable. And then the shrubs end. Like there's just like a little, like literally 5-yard patch of openness. And at that point, like the damn wind shifts. Happens to every single one of us, man. And it shifts, and he stands up. And I was like, all right. I was like, he's standing up and is presenting a beautiful shot. Time to get ready. He turns around and he jumps off the damn island, literally like cannonballs into this creek. We couldn't believe it. We were like this. And swims across 50 to 60 yards of rough current, hits the tundra on the other end, takes off a dead sprint until like we basically watch him disappear. And we were just like looking at each other kind of in shock. Because one, how cool was this? But two, did he really just like do that? Like we really thought he was more injured than that. And it really wasn't anything that serious. So then the problem became, how are we going to get back to the other side? Because we already brought 150 yards down the current. Well, so we get back. That was the end of that day. The very next day, we're driving down, probably go about 60 miles down south. We maybe there was probably 20, 25 hunters overall, like on the road, but a couple hundred miles of road. So it's like road hunters. That's kind of how you do it. You stop, you glass, try to pick one out. You make a decision if you want to do a spot and stalk or not. This is where the story gets real cool. So we spot a bull about 2 miles out, and there really wasn't any bulls around. So like if anyone like stops with binos, like and someone's driving by, they're going to stop because they're like, oh, what are they looking at? So we quickly confirmed it was a bull. And if you didn't know this, not does, but cow caribou also have antlers. So you have to be cognizant of that if you have a bull only tag. There's a few other ways to distinguish. They got a really big rack. It's 100% a bull, but a young bull can look just like a cow. Well, I could tell just 2 miles out, that's a bull, and so we quickly stopped, got out of the truck and put our gear on. As we're doing that, a truck pulls up. Y'all see something? Like, yeah, we're getting after it. Boom. And we just take off. So we get to about 700 yards from this bull, and we're kind of in this big bowl. And I'll send you some photos after this, but the tundra, I mean, it's just, you're never going to spot and stalk anything. It's just wild. This bull's by himself. So we sat up in this little hole, basically like the lowest thing we found, puddle of water, but we get in it. And for about 45 minutes, we're watching, trying to make a game plan. I told Tyler, hey, you're going to go kill this caribou, man. This one's yours. Well, after 45 minutes, he couldn't take it anymore. He's like, he's not going to do anything. We got to make a move. Well, I had heard like an old, like, hunter's tale in Alaska that if you find a lone bull, chances are he has been separated from his herd. They are very curious creatures, and their eyesight is not as good as like a whitetail. So if you have a game bag or like something white and you raise it up, because if you look at the rump of caribou, it's all white. So if you raise that up, they may think you are caribou, and maybe, just maybe, I come in to investigate. I told Tyler this, and I was like, no way, dude, come on. I've hunted elk, I've hunted deer. Like, no animal would ever do that. And I'm like, dude, I'm very skeptical of it too. I was like, but that bull is 700 yards away, and we have bows. Like, what are we going to do? We can't just walk at him, So I got a game bag and I put it on I put it on one of my walking sticks. And at first it was like I had a damn flag. So we were sitting there kind of like doing this. Well, that got his attention. And he actually stood up because he was bedded down. And as soon as he did that, like Tyler and I look at each other, we were like, no way. No way. But then he laid back down. So, another 30 minutes of this, and like he knows we're there, nothing's happening. And he's actually laying up on a ridge about 2/3 of the way up and looking at my GPS app. There's a creek down at the bottom there. So the wind has come in this way. So we were downwind. And finally I said, all right, Tyler, I was like, you want to go kill that caribou? I don't know how we're going to get close enough. I was like, but I got an idea. Let's just see what happens. I said, this is what we're going to do. I said, strap your bow to the back of my pack. And I was like, I'm going to walk, and then get your walking sticks out. I'm going to have my walking sticks. You are going to walk behind me, and I will hold the flag up with one walking stick. We will walk like this and make it look like we are one animal with 4 legs. And instead of walking towards him, we're going to walk that way. There was another kind of, I say creek. There's just these like ruts of all the glacial drain off. And I was like, all right, we go that way, to be downwind of him. And there's a ridge over there. I don't know, maybe we can get up and over the ridge. If he doesn't move, take half a day, but we might be able to come up behind him. But let's see what happens. So we get up and I leave my bow. And I had actually left my release in the truck. And I realized this about half a mile from the truck when we first started walking. But half a mile in the tundra was too far to turn around to go get it. So that's why I told Tyler, all right, this is your caribou. Well, we start walking and caribou stands up. And he starts walking. Not towards us, not away from us, kind of paralleling us, but closing the distance. And the first 100 yards of that, I was like, is it working? I was like, because we just sat there looking at him for an hour and a half, and now he's moving, and we're downwind, and I got a lot of footage of this that I'm gonna bring out one day on a YouTube video one day, and it was wild. So about an hour goes by. He ends up basically walking with us as if we're 2 other caribou, but he maintained his distance. He was about 100 to 110 yards for the most part, but we closed from 700 to 110 yards. Wide open on a damn caribou. And we crossed that ridge I was telling you about, and then he starts kind of like speeding up to get ahead of us. And I think that, he's going to wind us. That's what he's doing. Like he stops and he starts feeding. I said, let's stop. He's comfortable. So now we stop him, just watching him. Then he starts walking in toward us. And, at this point, Tyler's got his bow. And I told him, hey, you got to practice out to 60 out here. He told me at this point he hadn't really shot over 40. And I was like, all right. I was like, you're going to, I was like, if you feel comfortable, but like, you're going to have to sling an arrow. It was really windy. So we actually, and I'm sitting there range finding, and he's at 65 yards. And I'm like, Tyler, he's at 65. I can make that shot. You have to be able to make that shot. I don't think we're going to get him any closer than this. Tyler lets an arrow fly, and the wind is so bad, like you almost just see there. And it was like the same thing as the day before. He clipped him in what seemed to be the Achilles. So he jumps and he takes off kind of running, and Tyler's like, and I'm like, damn. But, I'm immediately like, wow, I didn't like that, really. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, he'll be fine. Well, then he stops, and he kind of starts coming back in, and we're just like, is this for real? Is curiosity going to kill the caribou? And sure enough, he started kind of coming back in, but being more like alert and a little suspicious, but like did not leave. So Tyler sets up again for a shot. Total miss. Yeah, actually, he drew back and it like spooked the caribou. Total miss. So we go through this whole iteration again. And about 10 minutes later, he gets one last shot. Well, this time he hits it. And both of us, it looked like it was like really good shot. The whole jump thing. And he takes off running. And then one of the funniest things I've ever seen hunting with someone happens. Tyler, he's an Apache pilot. He's about 6'4", 220 pounds. He throws his bow down and starts sprinting up this tundra hill because the caribou he just hit starts running this way. And he thinks he can, I don't know what he was thinking, if he was going to run up and tackle it, but it was pretty comical. I immediately saw where he put his bow down, because if I didn't, we never would have found it. And then what happens next is what no bow hunter wants. I just made a really bad shot and I lost him. And Tyler only had 3 arrows, and that was it. I didn't have my release, so I had left my compound bow at the pack. So I'm trying to make him feel better, but we've all been there. And he says, what if we go get the rifle and then come back and like push him out to the 5 miles and finish him off? I was like, you don't understand how long that's going to take, and I don't advise that. Hey, what kind of release do you have? Look at his release. I'm like, why don't we go get my bow? Let me borrow your release. Let's see if we can't find him. There's a creek on the backside of the ridge. If you did gut shot him, probably where he went. And if he's not there, maybe we'll see him in the next bull. If he's not there and he's gone, well, then it wasn't a bad hit, you know. So it takes us an hour and a half to get back to our packs and then go back up the ridge where we initially had seen him, get to the top, and we're glassing. Tyler's like, I don't see him. I don't see him. He's freaking out. And then all of a sudden, I see him. Well, sure enough, he's bedded down this creek. We see his antlers, right? That's the cool thing about caribou hunting. A lot of people ask me, how did you get this kill so close? Well, one, besides the caribou kind of being an idiot, just curious, but that's how they are. Two, we had a few things working in our favor. We still had the wind in our face. We are now coming down a ridge. He's wearing his army uniform. I'm wearing my Sika, green camo. So, they don't see color, but we literally, we blend in perfectly. So this is when I tell Tyler, I was like, I got an idea. I was like, probably not going to happen. There's no way in hell we're going to do a second stock on this animal. He's up to us. We can't use the flag anymore. We can't use the white game bag anymore. I was like, but we can see his antlers turning like a damn satellite dish. And I was like, so we're going to play red light, green light, Tyler. I was like, every time he looks that way, run, and as soon as he starts turning back, stop. And it was about 250 yards when we started. And we're about 70 yards out. And all of a sudden, the sinking feeling hits me that I might actually be able to sling an arrow at this caribou. And Tyler, he's range finding for me. I'm using his release. And he's like 40, 50, 40, whatever. And he actually recorded some pretty good footage. Well, I'm at 40, and the caribou stands up. He stands up. I'm going to send you this video on the side so you can see it. And then he kind of he just kind of turns around perfectly broadside. And then, in my head, I was like, I've been practicing for months. I'm ready for this. Everything. I was so still and calm. I later found out there was one major mistake I had made. And this is part of my journey as an archery hunter. I had never shot with my nocks ahead of this hunt. The nocks I had, even though they fit in my arrows, they were slightly smaller diameter. So my nocks were kind of getting stuck on the string. And some of them it was just drastically affecting the flight of my arrows. So we thought that Tyler had gut shot this caribou with his 2 hits, but that wasn't the case at all. Literally, one of them glanced off. There was almost like a little paper cut, 3 from his broadhead because the wind and the distance, and you lose a lot of velocity. But when I hit him at 40 yards, it hit way back, heard the smack, and he took off running with his guts hanging out. And now I'm feeling the same thing that Tyler was feeling 3 hours prior. But, Tyler was wrong. He didn't actually gut shot the damn animal. We were going down there to finish the job, but he just moved on to the next area. But now I had him injured. And he goes maybe 60, 80 yards and then beds back down. So I run up again to hit him again. The next arrow, my nock flies off because that arrow and I go, what in the hell was that? And when I do that, he takes off running again, but immediately lays back down. And at this point, I only have one arrow left because that morning, actually, I'd shot a ptarmigan at camp. Lost an arrow, but I got the ptarmigan. So our packs are up the ridge, and I was like, you know what? I was like, he's dead. Let's go get our packs, and let's walk back down. And then we'll, and we'll do everything. And we start walking and walk maybe 10 yards. And I stop and I was like, no. I was like, Tyler, I want him to suffer. Let me try one more time. And then I got up within 10 yards of him and I finished him off. And that was kind of tough. Yeah. People have been there. I've had to do that before. But at the end of the day, it comes with archery and I respect the animal. And I really want an ethical kill. And so I was able to finish the job. That whole story from start to finish, when we spotted that caribou, 9 hours later, 6.2 tundra miles, we were back at the truck, both of us with over 100 pounds of meat on our backs.
Was he a pretty big bull?
No, he wasn't a massive bull. He was a younger bull, but he had very good genetics. He was maybe a year ahead of where he should have been. He would have been a double shovel boo if he was bigger. To me, that the size of the rack doesn't matter. It's the experience and the story. And to be able to do that and it almost be a joint hunt. And I couldn't help but think, one, we're archers, but that just comes with hunting. But two, we just kind of hunted this animal like our ancestors did. And one thing I told Tyler is you know what? One day someone might find our arrows in this tundra and be like, what the hell is this about? It's the tundra sucked up a few of our arrows. That was a team effort. we finished the job, we got him down, and we fed our families on that caribou. And it was the best tasting meat I've ever had. And I didn't get anything fancy done with him. I've got a little euro, not even a euro. I just brought the antlers back. They wanted to charge me like $1,000 or $1,250 for a euro mount up there. I go, are you out of your mind? Nope. So I like literally just hacked off the skull capped it and flew back down with Alaska Airlines. I just moved to Kentucky, and I was like, duh, they got a velvet season. There's got to be a taxidermist that knows how to deal with it. So I brought the rack down, got it injected, and put on a, like a little mold. And it's kind of the centerpiece. He's not huge, but, that story to me is really, that's the moment when I realized that there wasn't anything I wasn't capable of. And like kind of going in, like I said, I was like, hey, I'm not going to take the rifle. I did that, and I was like, it's okay if I don't kill a caribou. I want to challenge myself. And for it to end up like that, it's pretty amazing. Probably will never be able to repeat that. And I personally don't know anyone other than a few Alaska locals that have actually gone up where I went to hunt north of the Arctic Circle on public land and been able to get it done with a bow on the ground. So, that's that's why I am the archer I am. Why I'm like, yeah, I think I could do a trad bow kill on public land now. But at the end of the day, it's just the story, the journey. If the end result is a nice animal on the ground, that just really makes it all that sweeter. That's what hunting means to me. Of course, I want to get meat in the freezer for my family, but I'm not really a trophy hunter. I'm getting a lot better, so I'm kind of overdue. Biggest buck I've killed is probably like a 120, if that, maybe 115. I don't care, but I missed that 145, and I know how much bigger that buck was than anything I have on my wall right now. He survived, and I got a lot of other big ones that are in the area. So we're going to see what I can do this fall, because I'm having less time to hunt, but I've gotten a lot better. So I'm a lot more efficient, and that's nice, because trying to balance kids, school, business, hobbies, personal life, marriage, it can get difficult. So anything you do in life takes an investment. And in my eyes, this was my investment, and I did what I wanted to do. My goal was, let me figure out deer hunting, because we're going to keep moving around, and I don't want any more excuses to not put meat in the freezer. I am now confident that I can kill white-tailed deer just about anywhere in the U.S. May not be a booner. I ain't quite at that level yet, but, baby steps. I'll be there soon enough, hopefully. But I respect the animals. I respect the hunt and everything that goes into it, all the hard work, the prep, and everything afterwards, and getting these memories, for life, these stories. And this is a story I've actually really wanted to tell. Like I said, I have footage of it. I could have made a video. I haven't yet. A couple close friends in the story. I've got the videos to back it up, especially the final kill shot. It's pretty incredible. I look at it and I'm like, that didn't happen. Like, because with a whitetail, man, I just like, even with a doe, I'm like shaking. But in that moment on the tundra with the caribou, I was just like, it was just instinctual, and that's going to be pretty hard to top, because that really advanced me to the next level. So hopefully this September, Tyler and I can share success once again up in the mountains of Idaho. We got some cool things planned there. I got an old high school buddy who's getting into filmography. He's really good. So he works up in Idaho as a park ranger. So I've invited him to come along and film a little bit. I'm going to take that opportunity to probably do a few of my commercials or advertisement for my freeze-dried meals. I'm hoping to have like my prototype, like what the packaging will look like and everything by then. Of course, we're not going to release that immediately, but kind of already had this goal 9 to 12 months out, and I'm hoping to come in a big way. If I'm fortunate enough to tag an elk in Idaho with a bow, I think it's just going to really help propel my cause and what I'm trying to do. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing to me is passing this down, because I didn't have this from beginning my story to this. Like now I want to teach folks and mentor. And if I have anything to share, I want to share. But we're really big on veteran and youth mentorship, coaching, and that type of stuff. So I think Labrador Outfitters will hopefully be a household name someday. Not saying that because I got a big head, but it's just I've got big goals and ambitions, and I want to come in and make a very positive impact in the outdoor industry.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your stories. So we got about 5 minutes left, so why don't we wrap this up by sharing one of your most embarrassing stories from the woods?
For the woods, I can't think of any one in particular. There is one, and then I'll share one that was on the lake, waterfowl hunting. I was hunting the spot one time, and if I don't go in the morning, it's certain I'm going to have to go at some point before I get up in my tree stand. And with my guts, I have to start moving around before that happens. So I'm in one of my hunt spots that like no one ever goes into. and I really have to go. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And I literally like dropped trowel, like kind of in the open, right on the edge of a trail. Not like right on the trail, but like it wasn't a trail, but it was just like, it was very dark, and I wanted to see if I could see any movement in this clear cut. And I'm just sitting there doing my business, looking at my app, and all of a sudden a light turns on, and I hear pushing. I literally almost got walked into by another hunter that was walking up, smelled something, turned his light on, freaked me out, freaked him out, and we had a good laugh about it. Told him good luck on this. No, he didn't see me because I was kind of on the edge, but like next to a tree in a bush. So I was like silhouetted, and he was walking in dark. So it was, I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, please don't walk up on me. Please don't walk on. And it was very clear he was about to like probably walk straight into me. I turned on my like light and did this and that. I don't think he expected a red light to turn on, and we had a good laugh about it. About 10:30, I'm like finishing the hunt, and I'm going back to the entrance, and he's telling this story to his buddy, like, and they're just laughing. But he's like, "Is that the guy?" And I was like, I put my head down. I was like, "Yeah, that was me." Another waterfowl stories. We didn't even get into our bird dog training. Maybe I can come back another time and tell you that story, because it means a lot to me. I got some pretty good bird dogs. First duck hunt in Kentucky. Got invited by some guys, and I'm kind of trying to show off, which I don't really do, but my dogs are really good. And I just tell people, just watch them work. And they cripple a bluebill. We're hunting on a lake, but there's a channel, and it's not an environment I'd hunted in yet, or my dogs. And divers, if you don't, come out right, you're probably not going to get them with your dog. And so I was pretty confident, and I was like, my dog will get it. My dog will get it. And I had my dog 300 yards out in a channel. I have no idea how deep this damn thing is. And I'm just watching this duck get further and further away. Like my dog would get really close, and it would dive. And I'm over there like over, trying to send my dog. My dog can't even pick up a bird. And I was like, I look like a chump right now. And about 10 minutes of this goes by, and they actually start getting concerned. They're like, hey, you might want to call your dog back in, man. It's okay. And I was like, no, she'll get it. And I was like, no, man. He was like, Chelsea, like, they don't get divers. And I've never like hunted divers on a big body of water like that, and especially on a channel with a current. My dog's a trooper. Like, she would have literally been out there trying to get that bird until she drowned. So I ended up bringing her back in. After 15 minutes, I was kind of defeated. And that was actually the one and only time my dog had never been able to get a bird. It wasn't her fault. It was just the circumstances of it. So that was a little embarrassing, because it was like some new friends, and I had like kind of talked myself up, and I was trying to get into a new hunting circle. And I think after that, they did not take me seriously at all. But I think most of the embarrassing stories, my buddies tell better than me. But like I told you, I hadn't been hunting like that long, and when I started getting a little bit more serious. So a lot of it was on my own. But every now and again, I think all of us have somewhat similar stories. But I'll have to think of a better one for next time. They're out there. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Again, thanks for your service for our country. And it's been a pleasure visiting with you and getting to meet you. For all our listeners, please tell your buddies. We just hit 125 downloads on our first episode. So hopefully people are liking what they're hearing so far, and we can start to snowball this. So until next time, keep your boots dirty and your aim clean. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of A Hunter's Legacy. Remember, hunting isn't just about the harvest. It's about the journey and the legacy we all leave behind. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with all the other hunters in your life. And if you have a story to tell, we'd love to hear it, because every hunter has a legacy worth sharing.